the founding principal of MS-223, the Laboratory School of Finance and Technology, a middle school in the South Bronx. I would rather have Ramon tell us about his journey than go on and on with the bio. So, what's special about MS-223?
I think we do what a lot of other schools do. I just wish that we said it more. And I don't think the public knows that. I think we as principals don't do a good enough job of letting the public know what we really do. And it really is to advocate for those kids who don't have those advocates. That's the role of schools in our society. And some of the schools are just better at letting folks know that that's what we do. And in our case, we put that into everything we do. So when we design after-school programs, those after-school programs are designed for those kids that don't have that parent to take them here, there, everywhere. We want to make sure those kids get the same experience that a kid with more money would get. Or sports programs, or being able to take them out on trips. We don't want it ever to be that you don't have enough money, you don't have connections to go to these things. If a middle-class parent is going to take their kids to go see 5 or 6 colleges, I want to take our kids to go see 5 or 6 colleges. And that really is a standard, is treating our kids like anyone would treat their own child.
And you have a special affection for the Bandidos.
Yes, yes.
The
Bendito.
Bandidos.
Sí, sí. Well, my concern is that we have a lot of a segment of our population in schools that are constantly being neglected. And you know, when the school system put in No Child Left Behind, it was supposed to shed light on those populations, right? Your L students, your second language learners, your special needs students, your African American, Latino students, those segments of the population. But not many of our schools have used that data to move those populations. So I think it's important that we set up models for schools to show them how to do it, and we should open up our doors. I mean, we take great pride in being called the Laboratory School of Finance and Technology, which means that we're learning and we open up our doors for other people to learn with us. And we also go out and learn at other schools. That's what schools should be about, is trying to learn best practices and get better, because our clients need us to be better. If we're going to compete with other countries, we have to be better, and that should always be how we drive our day every day, is trying to be the best we can be for our kids, and getting other folks to help us do it as well. Building partnerships in the community, building partnerships with companies, looking for other sources of money to give our kids well-rounded experiences. I think that population, the Bandido population, is a population I'm focused on because they tend to be those kids without the parent advocates. And if we're going to make change in our society, majority of our kids in our country, parents have fallen back from participating in schools, and schools have to learn how to now be more and more aggressive of supporting our families and getting those parents re-engaged into the school. And so I think that's where you have this group of kids who doesn't have that advocacy, and the school now has to go and be that advocate and should do it willingly.
So are these children that are being perhaps neglected to a certain degree? I mean, in the home?
I mean, I don't, it's hard for me to tell what's happening in the home, and I don't make judgments about that because I'm an educator. My job is to work and develop kids and make them smarter. Like, our kids come smart already to the school. It's how do we develop them more? And I think that I don't play the blame game. I don't sit around and say whose fault it is. If the kid comes to my door, we're gonna make that kid the best kid he can be. And we're gonna give him all the resources that any other kid would get. So that's the way I'm an activist. I don't wait for problems to happen. I go out and make sure that we address things.
Do you find that the kids to whom you provide the service, do you find that they want to learn what the schools have to teach them?
I mean, I think it's really important, and I have a great staff that gets the idea that we have to adapt to what kids' needs are. And I'm talking about interests. And so we do surveys. We do surveys of kids, we do surveys of parents, and we do surveys of teachers. And I have to do a survey with my staff. I do a 360 assessment where anybody could rate me in the school and they can rate me anonymously, and I use that to get better. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We have to change this mentality of we're managers and be open to learning more about what makes our kids interested in school. Some of us are dusting off programs that have been around for 20, 30 years and haven't used any new data to see is the population the same. I mean, we have schools that have demographic shifts and still doing the same thing they've been doing for years. And it's wondering, do they know their clientele? I'm curious, where's the cultural relevancy and the things that they are doing? I think we just have to be more, I'm saying principals need to be more activists and more engaged in the population. I mean, we have a staff. I mean, my teachers are ready to do it. They're looking for leadership to help them get to that point. And that's my role, is to get them inspired to want to do it more and to provide the resources for them to do it. But I have an incredible staff that gets it, that this is more than just a 8 to 3 job. This is going to require extra resources, extra time, if we want to close that achievement gap.
And where do they find that motivation? I mean, as opposed to in certain schools where
Sure.
it's just a job.
I think it comes with first recruiting. I think you have to recruit folks who have that mindset. You look at their resumes, you look at their backgrounds. I think the second piece is you have to constantly stimulate them, providing articles, giving them examples, celebrating staff when they do things like that, making it the culture in the building, having your students be appreciative, teach your students how to be appreciative of the things that are happening to them and not taking it for granted. All of this builds a culture that people want to do more and kids want to do more. And I think it can't just be, I'm going to give you some money or I'm going to just tell you what to do. It's got to be a comprehensive approach.
So, Principal Ramon Gonzalez, what do you think of the situation with ADHD, ADD, and medication in the schools?
That's a very difficult question because I've seen both sides. I've seen kids who need the medication and would not function in school, and I've seen kids who are overly medicated and it becomes a first thing. I mean, there are also financial gains when a kid has medication. Usually the parents qualify for SSI. So you have to wonder if there another benefit that we don't know about. We don't always know all the information that comes to the table. So I try to leave it to the professionals who are doing it and make observations and report those observations to the parents. And then at some point, our parents have to be part of it. I mean, that means educating our parents about both the effects and the benefits. I mean, they have to see both sides. Because for some of our kids, it may be necessary, and especially for extreme cases. I would say majority of our kids, I don't think so. I don't think we need a nation that's walking around medicated. And I think we become too reliant on medicine. But I'm saying that as Ramon Gonzalez the person, not Ramon Gonzalez the principal.
Sure. What about the use of computers, iPads, as tools for learning, but then again, perhaps increasing distraction? What do you think of that?
I mean, I think you said it the right way. I think they're a tool for learning, but there are a lot of other tools. There are, just getting out and building something. That's also a way using tools. I think some people have become too reliant on technology and looking for it to solve everything and being a silver bullet. You're talking to someone who's a former technology staff developer. So I've seen the ebbs and flow of technology. And I see it as a tool. In our school, we use it as a tool. And what I tell our staff is that if this device is not going to do it better than the way you were doing it, there's no point in using this device. So, and that's usually the criteria we use when we're using technology.
So what makes you proud as a principal?
I would say what makes me...
As an activist.
Sure. I think what makes me proud is to see my kids become critical thinkers. When I see my kids, how they process multiple sources of information, I know I've done my job. I know we have done our job. Again, I want my kids to be activists. That's my first role. I want them to be part of the decision-making process. I don't want them to be victims of other folks' decisions. We've had that too often in our history, and our communities are struggling because of that. And I think now we need that native leadership to come out the community, and the only way that native leadership is going to be developed if kids are thinkers and kids are problem solvers. And that's what we should be working on in our schools.
That's very interesting. So you use a a curriculum that all other
Yes.
schools use.
We're moving there. I mean, the Common Core, which is as close to a national curriculum as possible, without saying it's a national curriculum. I mean, it's more standards, or frameworks, I should say, is leading us in that direction. But critical thinking is not something new in schools. People have been doing it for years. Some schools have been doing it more than others. The more your more progressive schools have been doing it. And it's really planning. It requires planning on a teacher's role. It requires them thinking about the types of questions they're going to ask. It requires them meeting and collaborating to see different ways of coming at the problem. And it requires training kids to also attack problems that way. I mean, if I'm a math teacher, I'm used to teaching step by step. It's going to be very difficult to get that kid tomorrow to now be a critical thinker. It has to be developed over time. And there needs to be opportunities for kids to fail. Like, often in math, we don't talk about failure. We talk about you get it right or not. But in order for you to become a critical thinking, you have to fail a lot. That's a normal process. Failure, we learn from failure, and it shouldn't be a negative thing.
So what is your position on punishment and detention?
What is my position on punishment?
And detention.
Yes, I got to think about that one. I think that I believe in firm, right? Being firm and being warm. I don't think you need to be evil to be firm. So that's my first piece. I would say that I think you also need to give kids dignity when you're doing discipline. I believe in discipline, but I don't believe in humiliating kids. I think you have to give them opportunities. So we use a lot of community service in our school. Right now, 25% of the kids in prison are middle schoolers in New York. It's an amazing statistic. And I believe more than 60% of the kids in juvenile facilities in New York are African American males. The other 37% are Latino. So 80 or 94, 95, somewhere around there, are kids of color, boys of color, I should say. So we're doing something wrong if it's just these type of kids. It's not evenly spread. So we have to really rethink our discipline policy. And I think we're moving to a more, I call it a dignified discipline policy, where the job is not to push the kid's head into the dirt, which some of us are doing. When you suspend the same kid 20 times in some cases, you have to really think maybe you need a totally different approach. And maybe it's not about discipline. Maybe it's about mental health. Maybe it's about other support services, that experience gap that I was talking about. Yeah. Maybe it's about providing those other pieces to help that kid able to make decisions. So, and we talked about it as well during my talk, was this idea of empowering kids, giving them the skills to solve problems, not waiting on, what's your past life and who was mean to you and what would your dad do. We're at this point now, we're going to learn some skills to solve problems, because we can't wait till all that. We have to start working on solving these skills now. Otherwise, our kids are going to be in prison in other places. So again, I don't want them to be victims. I want them to be activists. And this is all part of that mentality.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks to the Marion Institute.
It's
a great conference. Thank you.
Wonderful.